Hey, this is Tom from MVP Chess. Welcome back to my series on Bobby Fischer's seminal work, My 60 Memorable Games. In this video, we'll be analyzing game number 46 that Fischer played versus Pal Benko in the U.S. Chess Championship in 1964. This game features arguably Fischer's greatest move. You're not going to want to miss it. Before we jump in, don't forget to smash that subscribe button and join Team MVP. Thanks for your support. Pal Benko was an American and Hungarian grandmaster. He made a huge contribution to chess opening theory when he introduced the Benko gambit in the Benoni defense, a very fearsome counterattacking opening for the black pieces. Of course, he was a great player in his own right. He appeared in the candidates tournament 2 times in 1959 and 1962. So, one of the greatest players of his era, but of course he's going up against the greatest, the GOAT, Bobby Fischer, with the white pieces. Now, Fischer, of course, played e4 best by test with the white pieces. Fischer was sitting on a perfect score, 10-0 in the U.S. Chess Championship. Could he go a perfect 11-0? This was the final round. We have pawn to g6, the modern opening, a very flexible opening for black that can transpose into other openings such as the Pirc Defense and the King's Indian Defense. So, depending on the opening systems that you like to play, you really have to be careful about transpositions in this opening, which Fischer does here. d4, bishop g7. Fischer plays knight c3. He wants to keep the game in e4 waters. Of course, he could play pawn to c4 here, but this would potentially transpose into the King's Indian Defense. Of course, this is a great way for white to play, but this is a mainline d4 opening. Fischer wants to keep it in e4 waters. That's why he plays knight c3. And after d6, f4, knight f6, knight f3, we have the Pirc defense. And Fischer has played with pawn to f4, arguably the most testing variation against the Pirc defense, the Austrian attack. This is a very, very uncompromising approach by Fischer, as usual. After castles, bishop d3, bishop g4, Fischer questions the bishop and wins what he coined the minor exchange, winning the bishop for the knight. So Fischer's got the bishop pair, which he loves, and in particular has got an unopposed light square bishop on d3. Will this play a role in the game? We shall see. Knight c6, attacking the pawn, so Fischer develops and defends. We have e5, of course. Benko has played very passively so far. He needs to try to get a foothold in the center, so he does so with pawn to e5. Fischer captures and advances pawn to f5. Now, Fischer has a huge positional threat here, and that's just to play g4 with basically a winning bind on the king side. So Benko plays the best move according to Fischer, capturing here. Of course, this does weaken the king. Benko now has less pawn cover in front of his king, and this half-open g-file could become relevant later in the game. Benko plays knight d4, looking for activity, even at the cost of a pawn. Fischer declines here. The queen's attacked, so he decides to just play queen f2. Fischer says, though, he did consider the line queen takes e5, which would involve a queen sacrifice, where after h takes and castles queen side, we could see in this position that Fischer would have a lot of compensation for the sacrifice material. But he decided to keep a little bit more control over the position. I think this is the best practical move, queen f2. You've got a great position. Why complicate matters? After knight e8, Fischer decides to castle to the king's side. Okay, he felt that his king would be safer on this side of the board. Of course, while the king is safer, this means that Fischer no longer can safely advance the king's side pawn. So, safer king, but perhaps less attacking chances. But as we'll see, Fischer gets a raging initiative on the king side anyway because of Benko's inaccurate play. Knight d6, queen g3, Fischer wanting to activate the queen and open up the rook on this half-opened file. king h8, Benko takes a tempo to get the king off of this open g file, and then Fischer plays queen g4. Nice move. A prophylactic move by Fischer. He anticipates pawn to f5 from Benko, which is one of his really only active pawn breaks in the position. So with queen g4, he prevents that move. Pawn to c6 from Benko, kind of a mysterious move. Doesn't really do a whole lot. I mean, it does take control over the d5 square, but doesn't really generate any play for the second player. Queen h5, Fischer inches a little bit closer with the queen. Notice he's still controlling this f5 break and is putting pressure on the h7 pawn. So who knows? If this light square bishop could ever become operational, this could be a really dangerous coordination between the queen and bishop. In this position, we have queen e8 from Benko. Now, I am going to turn it over to you in this position. We are at a really critical juncture in the game. Two questions for you. Number one, what is Fischer's attacking plan in this position? Okay. And number two is, how do we carry that out? And how do we prevent Black's main defensive idea? Okay. Pause your videos and have a think. What should Fischer play here? What would be Benko's response to it? And how should Fischer prevent that threat? Pause your videos and have a think. Okay, I made this one a little hard on you, okay? Fischer's key idea, as I've alluded to, is to try to unleash this light squared bishop, okay, in combination with the queen. So congratulations if you found the idea bishop takes d4. That's step one, okay? We're going to remove the knight from the board to free the advance of the e5 pawn, okay? So that's step one. Now, if your idea in this position was to play pawn to e5, this really misses the mark, okay? And misses Benko's key defensive idea in this position and why he played queen e8 to begin with. Black can play in this position pawn to f5. Really nice move and really nice idea by Benko. Of course, it was flawed, but this was his key idea in the position. Blocking this diagonal and simultaneously offering the exchange of queens. Notice Fischer's queen is en prise in this position. So after this capture, the knight can recapture, saving the piece. And we would have a roughly equal endgame with chances for both sides. Notice Fischer has also lost his bishop pair. His knight's under attack. This position would be totally tenable for Black. So we have this key idea, but our opponent is preventing it. Okay, and this is a great example of reciprocal thinking in chess. Okay, we don't want to just abandon this idea of playing e5 and unleashing this light square bishop and play something weak and meager like knight e2 just because our knight's attacked. Okay, we want to try to make this idea work. And this is where Fischer played arguably his most brilliant move. And congratulations if you found this. Rook f6. Boom! What a great move. Double exclam for sure. Fischer plants the rook on f6 to forcibly prevent Benko's defensive idea, pawn to f5. So let's look at a couple variations here. Benko in the game played king g8, but of course we should consider the captures. What happens after bishop takes f6? Well, e5, boom. Black cannot prevent the decisive checkmating attack on h7. Notice, since his bishop captured the rook on f6, it's blocking the f-pawn from advancing. It's blocking Benko's key defensive idea. Okay, what about d takes c3, capturing the knight? Well, of course, e5 wins just the same. The rook is blocking the pawn from advancing to f5. There's no defense for Black in this position. That's why Benko played king g8. So, of course, Fischer continues with his plan. Pawn to e5, threatening mate in 1 on h6. Benko is able to defend this mate with pawn to h6, but notice after knight e2, this knight is on prise. In this position, Benko resigned, okay? But let's take a look at Fischer's key idea in this position. Of course, Fischer, with the rook menacingly posted on f6, is threatening just to capture this knight. If the knight were to retreat, queen f5 is the end of the road. Thank you very much. And, of course, if Benko decides to capture the rook now, Fischer could simply capture on h6 with the queen, followed by mate on h7 in short order. So, understandably, after knight e2, Benko resigned the game. This meant that Fischer not only won the U.S. Chess Championship, but he did so with an undefeated mark of 11-0. Wow. What an incredible accomplishment. Let's leave this double exclam move, rook to f6, on the board as our final position. So this was a great attacking game from Fischer, but a really excellent example of reciprocal thinking in chess and how Fischer found this move, rook to f6. Okay, when you see it at first glance, it just seems crazy. But once you understand that Fischer had wanted to play e5 in this position, but saw Benko's key defensive idea, f5, the move becomes very logical, just preventing this idea concretely so that you can carry out your own plan. Okay, so in your own games, when you find a key idea, it looks like your opponent is preventing it. Of course, the first question you should ask yourself is, what happens if I do it anyway? But if you can't make the idea work, don't give up on it. Don't abandon it. Try to find an auxiliary move to make it work. And that's exactly what Fischer did in this game with a rook to f6. Double exclam. Boom. End of the game. So I hope you enjoyed this matchup between Benko and Fischer. Don't forget, smash that subscribe button. You're not going to want to miss my next installment of the series, which will be game number 47. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.